You were always in the right place at exactly the right time, and you always have been. This passage comes to us from the book Rules for a Night, and today I wanted to read some passages from this book to you guys and talk about them. I've read this book now 2 times, and I just picked it up again because it's a very, very small book, as you can see, but it's very profound. It's profoundly simple, and it's simply profound. There's a lot of good messages in here, and it's very easy to consume, and a lot of good life lessons I believe you can practice. And I just started reading it, and I got about 5 pages in, and I spent a lot of time because I just made a video on contemplation, and I spent a lot of time just contemplating the first few pages because of all the amazing and valuable lessons I believe are inscribed on these pages, and I wanted to share them with you guys. So, obviously, I recommend you go and get the book for yourself because it's always better to actually read it and get your own, you know, opinions about all these things. But without further ado, I'll start reading some of the stuff. First off, I'll give a quick rundown. Essentially, this book was written by a knight who was about to go into battle, and he wanted to write to his kids because he feared he might die. So he wrote out the rules for a knight that his grandfather taught him. And that's just a quick summary because I don't want to spoil the book for you guys. But as a young kid, he was getting in a lot of trouble, and he says, "My soul felt wild, and I could not discern for what reasons I had been born. This lack of purpose weighed so heavy on me that at times I felt despondent, as if I were made of lead and sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Other times my idle nature made me feel so light and insignificant I worried I might float away. Finally, this crisis inside me rose to a deafening drum. I decided to seek out the wisest man I could find and ask him to tell me how to live." I think how he described his lack of purpose was very profound. It was he was so heavy with a lack of purpose, but at the same time he was so light. He felt so insignificant, but at the same time he felt like the world was bearing down on him. And I think that just resonated with me, and I liked how he articulated that. And then he says he's going to go talk to the wisest person he could find, which is his grandfather. His grandfather is the wisest person in the realm. It's medieval. It's like 1600, so yeah, they were like Renaissance. So he says his grandfather was the wisest person in the realm. So he goes and seeks him out, and his grandfather opens the door and asks if he wants some tea. And or before that, he like spews out his whole life and all of his worries to his grandfather, and his grandfather just takes a deep breath and says, "Come in for some tea." And he says he anxiously goes in, and then this is what happens. He his grandfather starts pouring out a cup of tea, and he pouring and pouring, and then the glass overflows, and the hot tea goes all over his leg, and the guy obviously is like, "What are you doing?" And then he says, "You are like that cup spilling over," said my grandfather. "You cannot retain anything. There is too much going on, and you are splashing everywhere, burning what you touch." So he's basically saying, with the meta, like the analogy that he puts in front of him, like you are like this cup overflowing. You're too anxious, and there's too much going on, and you're not retaining anything because you're all over the place. You're despondent. You need to, as he says coming up, he says, "Look at this cup," he said, pouring to the other small blue cermatic, the other small blue cup, still sitting on the white tablecloth. It is not over anxious to be filled. It sits patient, unmoving, and empty. Carefully, he poured a small amount of tea into the cup. "You must be like this," he started, with a mischievous grin, gesturing to the steam gently rising from the second blue cup. "Answers to your questions will come, but if you are not still and empty, you will never be able to retain anything. You are not still and empty. You will never be able to retain anything. And I think this just goes back to the point, you have to be patient. And there's almost a sense of, waiting for life to come to you. You have to have a sense of urgency, but you also have to be patient, and you can't rush everything. And I think that's what he's telling them here. You can't be so over anxious, because your purpose may come to you, the meaning of life for you may come, but if you're too anxious and too distraught, you're not going to be able to accept it wholly and willingly. And then we go to the part where I started this with. He says, but the first thing you must understand is that you need not have gone anywhere. You are always in the right place at the right time, and you always have been. I really like that as well, because you need not have gone anywhere, because he's basically asks, his grandfather says, you can be my squire, and he's 17, which is old for a squire, I guess. And he says, to reassure him, but first, you understand that you need not have gone anywhere. Everything that's happened the last 17 years, it happened for a reason. And the only thing that matters is that you're here now, and what you choose to do with this is what matters. And I just found that very profound, and that's how I started the video, and that's kind of the inspiration for this video in general, because I thought that message was just amazing. And then we get into the first chapter here, because the chapters are made up by the rules. So the first chapter is on solitude, or the first rule. And it says, create time alone with yourself. When seeking the wisdom and clarity of your own mind, silence is a helpful tool. The voice of our spirit is gentle and cannot be heard when it has to compete with others. Just as it is impossible to see your reflection in troubled water, so too is it with your soul. In silence we can sense eternity sleeping inside of us. In silence we can sense eternity sleeping inside of us. If that doesn't spark contemplation in you, then I don't know what will, honestly. I think that's very, very good. But yeah, that's how every chapter starts, every rule, and then tells a little bit of story. And I'm not going to get into every single one in this video. I might do a video series talking about all the rules, actually, because I really like them all. But I'll get into this one in this video. And essentially, he talks about the war. He says, while I teach you about the ways of the war, I want you to know that the real struggle is between the two wolves that live inside each of us. He says, one wolf is evil and one wolf is good. To the evil wolf, it is angry. One wolf is evil. It is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, false pride, inferiority. And then he says the other is good. It is joy, love, hope, serenity, humility, loving kindness, forgiveness, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, faith. And then the squire, he says, which wolf will win? And the grandfather says, whichever one you feed. And I have videos kind of talking about that, fuel the fire, feed the right wolf. And that's basically what I think he's saying in this passage, feed the wolf of goodness, feed the wolf of righteousness, just all these things. Don't feed the wolf of evil, or the wolf of evil will win.